Have you ever noticed your mind won't shut up? Right now, as you're listening to this, your mind is probably doing 10 things, thinking about what you need to do later, replaying something embarrassing from yesterday, worrying about tomorrow, judging whether this is worth your time, planning your response, analyzing if you're doing life correctly. Your mind never stops, and it's destroying you, not dramatically, quietly, by making you miss the only moment that actually exists, this one, by turning every important moment into a mental hurricane of thoughts about the moment instead of just being in the moment. You freeze when it matters because your mind is screaming. You fail not because you lack skill, but because your thoughts sabotage your actions. You're exhausted not from what you do, but from the constant noise inside your head that never, ever stops. This isn't new. In 1595, the deadliest samurai in Japan had the same problem. Perfect technique, body trained for 2 decades. But his mind betrayed him the moment real pressure hit. His name was Yagyū Munenori, and the person who fixed him wasn't a warrior. It was a 25-year-old Zen monk named Takuan Sōhō who'd never held a sword in his life. What happened next changed everything, not just for that samurai, but for understanding how the human mind actually works under pressure. But before I tell you that story, if you want more content like this, authentic philosophy, warrior psychology, and uncomfortable truths about your mind, subscribe to Presence and Purpose. We release videos weekly that cut through the noise and show you what actually works. Now, here's what happened when a monk who knew nothing about combat taught Japan's finest warrior something no sword master could. Chapter 1. The Young Monk. Daitoku-ji Temple, Kyoto, Spring 1595. Takuan Sōhō was 25 years old and uncertain about everything. He'd entered monastic life at 14, 11 years of Zen training, Zazen meditation, koans study, calligraphy, tea ceremony, contemplation of emptiness. He was good at being a monk, excellent even. His master, Ito Shoteki, recognized depth in his practice, but Takuan felt incomplete, like he understood Zen intellectually but hadn't yet embodied it fully. The monastery was his world, quiet gardens, meditation halls. Other monks are equally dedicated to studying nothing, becoming nothing, dissolving the illusion of self. This world made sense to him, peaceful, contemplative, separate from the chaos of secular life. That morning, his master summoned him. Takuan, tomorrow a samurai arrives, Yagyū Munenori. You may have heard the name. Takuan had. Yagyū Munenori was famous sword instructor to powerful daimyo, master of the Yagyu Shinkage-ryu style, considered one of the finest swordsmen in Japan. His father, Yagyu Munenori, was my student years ago. Now the son comes with a problem his sword masters cannot solve. His mind betrays him in critical moments, freezes, overthinks, loses the flow of combat. The master looked at Takuan directly. I'm assigning you to teach him. Takuan's eyes widened. Master, I know nothing about swordsmanship. I've never studied combat. How can I possibly… Exactly, Ito interrupted. You know nothing about swords, so you won't be distracted by technique. You'll teach him what he actually needs, how to stop his mind from destroying what his body knows perfectly. But master, surely someone with martial experience would be better suited. Takuan, the old master's voice was firm. You've spent 11 years learning to sit with your own mind, to observe thoughts without being controlled by them, to find stillness beneath mental chaos. That's exactly what he needs to learn. The question is, can you teach what you know? This was terrifying. Teaching Zen to other monks was one thing. They came seeking stillness. But a warrior? Someone trained for violence, action, decisiveness? How could Zen possibly help that? I'll try, master. Don't try. Teach. Show him that the mind trained in emptiness is more powerful than the mind trained in technique. If you believe what we practice here has real value, prove it. Chapter 2. The Broken Warrior. The next morning, Yagyū Munenori arrived at dawn. 33 years old, lean, muscular, carrying himself with the controlled precision of someone who'd spent 2 decades training combat movement. But his eyes showed something else: stress, frustration, the look of someone technically proficient but internally struggling. Takuan met him in the temple's guest quarters. They bowed, sat across from each other. For a long moment, neither spoke. Takuan didn't know how to begin. This wasn't another monk seeking enlightenment. This was a warrior seeking. What exactly? Finally, Munenori spoke. "My father studied here years ago. He said Zen made him a better warrior. I didn't understand. I thought sword training made better warriors. But I'm here because I'm facing a problem that technique can't solve." "Tell me," Takuan said quietly. "In practice, my technique is perfect. My students can't touch me. My form is flawless. But in real duels, when stakes are actual, when reputation is at risk, my mind, it fragments. I think about the outcome while fighting. I analyze my technique mid-strike. I second-guess my instincts. And that hesitation, that thinking, gets me hit." He looked at Takuan with something like desperation. "My masters say I'm overthinking. They tell me to stop thinking and just act. But I don't know how. I can't just turn my mind off. The more I try not to think, the more I think about not thinking." Takuan understood this completely. Not from combat, but from meditation. "You're describing what we call monkey mind," he said. "The mind that jumps from thought to thought, never settling. In Zazen, beginners experience this intensely. They sit down to meditate, and their mind explodes with thoughts. So you understand the problem. But what's the solution? How do I make my mind quiet when it matters?" "You don't," Takuan said. "Not directly. Trying to force the mind to be quiet makes it louder. This is the paradox every meditator faces." Munenori looked confused. "Then what do I do?" "You learn to relate to your mind differently. Not controlling it, observing it. Let me show you." Chapter 3. The teaching begins. Day 1. Just sitting. Takuan led Munenori to the meditation hall. Simple space. Tatami mats. Walls are bare except for a single scroll, an enso, the Zen circle. "Sit," Takuan instructed. "Cross-legged, back straight. Half close your eyes. Gaze at the floor about 3 feet in front of you." Munenori sat. His posture was excellent. Years of martial training had built body awareness. "Now watch your breath. Don't control it. Don't change it. Just notice the inhale. Notice the exhale. When your mind wanders, and it will gently return attention to the breath." "That's it? That's everything." They sat for 20 minutes. For Munenori, it was torture. Within minutes, his mind erupted. Thoughts about his students, his upcoming duels, his reputation, analyzing whether he was doing the meditation correctly, wondering if this was wasting his time. When the 20 minutes ended, Munenori looked frustrated. "My mind was chaos. I couldn't stop thinking." "Good," Takuan said. "Now you're aware of what your mind is doing. Most people live their entire lives controlled by thoughts and never even notice. You just spent 20 minutes witnessing the actual state of your mind. That's the first step. But how does this help me in combat?" "In combat, what happens when your mind is chaotic?" "I freeze, hesitate, miss openings." "Exactly. Because chaos in the mind creates chaos in the body. But if you train the mind to be still not by forcing it, but by learning to observe thought without being controlled by thought, then the body can act purely, without mental interference." Munenori was skeptical but curious. "How long does this take?" Takuan smiled. "That question is thinking about the outcome, instead of being present with the process. That's the mind that betrays you in combat, always somewhere else, never here. We'll sit daily. 20 minutes now. Eventually, an hour. And slowly, you'll feel the difference." Chapter 4. The Monk's Uncertainty. That evening, Takuan returned to his master. "Master Ito, I don't know if I'm doing this correctly. He's a warrior. He needs practical combat solutions. And I'm teaching him to sit and watch his breath. How does this help him fight?" The old master was silent for a moment. Takuan, what is the essence of Zen? To see one's true nature, to realize emptiness, to transcend the illusion of self. And what is the essence of swordsmanship? Takuan had no answer. The essence of swordsmanship, Ito continued, is the same as Zen. To act without the interference of self. When the swordsman thinks I am striking, he's already too slow. When he worries I might fail, he's already failed. The perfect strike emerges when there is no I thinking about striking, just striking. Pure action without self-consciousness. The master smiled. You're teaching him exactly what he needs. You're teaching him to dissolve the self that's interfering with his technique. You just don't realize it yet because you've never held a sword. But Master, Zazen seems so passive. Combat is active. Is it? Watch a master swordsman. Before the strike, what is he? Still, empty, waiting, not thinking about striking, just present. Then, in one instant, explosion of action. Then immediately back to stillness. That's Zazen in motion. Stillness, action, stillness. The cycle of breath. Inhale, exhale, inhale. Takuan began to understand. He'd been thinking of Zen and combat as separate, but maybe they were describing the same state in different contexts. Continue teaching him to sit, Ito said. Trust the practice. The rest will reveal itself. Chapter 5. Breakthrough. Week 2. Munenori sat in Zazen daily. 20 minutes became 30, became 45. Something was shifting. His mind was still active, but he'd begun to notice space between thoughts, brief moments where the mental chatter paused and pure awareness remained. One afternoon after Zazen, Takuan introduced a new practice. Take your sword, perform your kata, but with complete presence, no thought about the form, no analysis, just pure execution, the way you breathe without thinking about breathing. Munenori drew his sword, began the familiar movements of his style's basic kata. At first, his mind narrated, now shift weight, now raise the sword, now cut. But Takuan's voice cut through. Stop thinking, just move. Let the kata perform itself. Munenori tried to release the mental commentary. It was difficult. His training had emphasized precision, analysis, and perfecting each movement. But then, for just a few seconds, thought disappeared. The kata executed itself. His body knew the movements perfectly. The mind didn't need to direct anything. Those few seconds felt completely different, effortless, fluid, perfect. When the kata finished, Munenori was breathing heavily, not from exertion, but from the intensity of the experience. That's Mushin, Takuan said quietly. No mind. The state where the self disappears and pure action remains. You just experienced what Zazen training creates. The mind that doesn't interfere with the body. I've felt something like that before, Munenori said. In combat when I'm in the zone. But I could never access it deliberately. It just happened sometimes. Exactly. Untrained, Mushin is random. With Zazen practice, it becomes accessible. You're training the mind to get out of its own way. Week 4. Takuan introduced koan practice. Here's your koan. What is your original face before your parents were born? Munenori looked confused. That makes no sense. How can I have a face before I was born? Exactly. The question isn't meant to be answered logically. It's meant to break your logical mind, to create a crack where something deeper can emerge. Sit with this question. Don't try to solve it intellectually. Let it work on you. Days passed. Munenori's rational mind tried to solve the koan like a puzzle. Failed. Got frustrated. That frustration was the point. The koan was breaking his habitual thinking patterns. One morning during Zazen, something shifted. The question, what is my original face, was there, but suddenly it didn't need an answer. There was just awareness, clear, empty, without the usual mental commentary. This was what the koan was pointing toward. The awareness that exists before thinking, before the constructed self, original mind. Week 6. You're ready for the final teaching, Takuan said. Fudoshin, the immovable mind. He explained, "When you're attacked, your mind has three reactive options: freeze, flee, or fight back reactively. All three are controlled by fear. Fudoshin is the fourth option: remain centered, observe what's happening, respond appropriately without being moved by fear." How do I develop this? Through daily sitting with discomfort. Zazen when you're tired, when you're anxious, when you want to quit. Learning that discomfort doesn't require reaction, it's just a sensation. The mind can remain stable even when experiencing difficulty. They practiced. Munenori would sit Zazen while Takuan created disturbances, sudden sounds, unexpected touches. The goal, remain absolutely still, not suppressing reaction, but noticing it without being controlled by it. Over time, Munenori's flinch response decreased. Loud sounds occurred, but his center remained stable. His mind noticed the disturbance but didn't collapse into reactivity. This was Fudoshin, the foundation that combat could be built on. Chapter 6. The Test. Month 3. Munenori requested permission to test his training in actual combat. A demonstration duel was arranged. Munenori would face another highly skilled swordsman, Kimura, known for aggressive, overwhelming offense. The morning of the duel, Munenori sat in Zazen for 1 hour. His mind was clear, centered, present. Takuan watched from the side as the duel began. Kimura attacked, immediately explosive, committed, pure aggression. The old Munenori would have met force with force, thought about strategy in the midst of combat, and analyzed openings while fighting. But something was different now. Munenori's mind was quiet, empty, just pure awareness. He didn't think, "He's attacking high or I should counter low." His body moved, appropriately, effortlessly. Mushin. No mind in action. Kimura threw everything at him. Munenori responded fluidly, his technique emerging from stillness rather than thought. The duel lasted 3 minutes. Munenori won decisively. But more importantly, his mind had remained stable throughout. No fear, no overthinking, no second-guessing, just clear awareness, allowing perfect technique to manifest. After, Kimura approached, bowed deeply. "Munenori-san, your technique hasn't changed, but something else has. You've become, I don't know the word, unreachable, like fighting smoke." Munenori bowed back, then found Takuan. "It worked. Everything you taught. The Zazen, the koan, the Fudoshin training. In that duel, my mind was completely still, and my technique was better than it's ever been, not because the technique improved, but because my mind stopped interfering." Takuan smiled. "Now you understand. Zen isn't separate from combat. The still mind and the effective warrior are the same thing described differently." Chapter 7. The monk becomes teacher. Years later, 1605. Word spread. Yagyū Munenori had become unbeatable, not through better technique, but through mental training with a Zen monk. Other samurai came to Daitokuji, not to learn swordsmanship, but to learn what Munenori had learned. Takuan, now 35, had become known as the monk who understood warriors better than martial masters. The shogun himself, Tokugawa Ieyasu, requested a meeting. "Takuan sensei, my sword instructor, tells me you taught him something no dojo could teach. I want to understand this." Takuan explained, "Great lord, a warrior's technique is only as effective as the mind controlling it. Train the body but not the mind, and the untrained mind betrays the trained body the moment real pressure comes. So, you teach them to, not think." "No, I teach them to observe thought without being controlled by it, to find the stillness beneath mental chaos, to access Mushin, the state where action emerges without the interference of self-conscious thought." "And this makes them better warriors?" "It makes them complete warriors. Technique trains the weapon, Zen trains the wielder. Both are necessary." The shogun nodded slowly. "Would you write this down? For my warriors to study?" This request became what history knows as the unfettered mind, Fudoshi Shinmyoroku, Takuan's treatise on Zen and swordsmanship. In it, he explained, on Mushin, the mind must be like water, formless, flowing, never stopping anywhere. The mind that stops on the opponent's sword has already lost. The mind that stops on its own technique has already lost. No mind means the mind that flows freely without stopping on anything. On Fudoshin, the immovable mind doesn't mean rigid, it means centered. The storm rages, but the center remains calm. The warrior experiences fear, but fear doesn't move the center. This is Fudoshin. On Zazen, daily sitting teaches the mind to be still. This stillness doesn't mean absence of thought. It means thought no longer controls you. When thought loses its power, pure action becomes possible. Final reveal, the Zen truth. 1638. Takuan's final years. Now 68, Takuan reflected on his life. The young, uncertain monk had become one of the most influential teachers in Japan, not to other monks, but to warriors. A young monk asked him, "Master, you've taught the shogun's finest swordsmen. You've written about combat, but you've never held a sword. How did you understand what they needed?" Takuan smiled. "I understood because Zen and combat are the same thing seen from different angles. The swordsman seeks to strike without thought. The meditator seeks to observe without interference. Both are dissolving the self that creates problems. When I teach Zazen, I'm teaching warriors to find the stillness that makes perfect action possible. When I teach Mushin, I'm teaching them what every meditator discovers, that the self is an illusion, and action is purest when the self disappears. The monks who only meditate miss half the truth that stillness must be tested in action. The warriors who only train technique miss half the truth that technique fails without stillness. I was uniquely positioned to see both sides because I lived in one world and taught the other. So Zen didn't change to fit warriors. Warriors discovered Zen was already exactly what they needed. Exactly. I didn't modify Zen for combat. I showed them that the mind trained in emptiness is the mind that performs best under pressure. Not because I understand swords, but because I understand minds. The young monk absorbed this. "What's your final teaching, Master?" "That the stillest mind creates the most effective action. Whether you're a warrior facing death or a person facing daily life, the principle is the same. Train the mind through sitting meditation. Learn to observe thought without being controlled by it. Find the stillness beneath mental chaos, and from that stillness, perfect action emerges naturally. The world thinks warriors and monks are opposites, but we discovered we're teaching the same thing, how to transcend the self that creates suffering and failure. They approach it through combat. We approach it through meditation. But the destination, Mushin, no self, pure awareness, is identical." The monk's lesson. Takuan's final words, written before his death. "I spent my life in monasteries, studying emptiness, contemplating nothing. The world might think this is impractical, separate from real life. But the warriors who trained with me discovered something important. The mind trained in stillness outperforms the mind trained in technique. The warrior who meditates daily becomes more effective than the warrior who only trains in combat. The person who learns to observe their thoughts without being controlled by them gains power that no external skill can provide. This isn't mysticism, it's mechanics. The mind is either your weapon or your weakness. Train it deliberately through Zazen, through observing thoughts, through daily practice of presence, or it will betray you when pressure comes. I was just a monk who sat and watched my breath. But somehow, that simple practice, sitting still and observing mind, became the foundation that made warriors unbeatable. Not because meditation replaces technique, but because the still mind allows perfect technique to emerge without interference. Whatever your battlefield, actual combat, or daily challenges, the truth remains. The untrained mind will betray the trained body. Stillness precedes perfect action. Meditation creates effectiveness. This is what I learned. This is what I taught. This is the truth every warrior discovered when they stopped perfecting technique and started training the mind that executes technique. Sit, watch your breath, observe your thoughts, Find the stillness. Everything else emerges naturally from that foundation. This is the way. Not the warrior's way or the monk's way. Just the way.